Hey everybody, welcome back to Muscles and Music by Sophia McGonigal. As of the recording of this video, it is February 20th. So I thought I would do something a little bit differently and give you more of an about me video. February is is Black History Month, but it is also National Heart Disease Awareness Month. So I thought that I would round out February by giving you a little breakdown of my history, my story, and telling you a little bit more about the conditions I have. I do apologize if my dog barks. I will try to continue, and I hope that it is not too distracting. So heart disease is the number one killer of women and also the number one birth defect. 1 in 110 babies are born with some form of congenital heart disease. I am one of them. As you can see, I'm also wearing a Go Red shirt, which is a campaign by the American Heart Association to raise awareness for heart disease in women. So I was born with what is called mitral valve and aortic valve stenosis. I am going to give you a few technical terms. Please stay with me. This is the only time I will get technical, but it's the best way to describe what it specifically I was born with. Mitral valve stenosis is the narrowing of the mitral valve, which is the heart valve that controls the flow of blood from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and that's according to the Penn Medicine website. Aortic valve stenosis is the narrowing of the aortic valve opening, which restricts the flow of blood from the left ventricle to the aorta, and that's according to the American Heart Association website. So my mom and dad actually found out about my heart condition about a month and a half prior to when I was born. My mom and dad went to a regular sonogram appointment, and during the course of the appointment, the doctors came in at the nurse's requests, looked at the sonogram, and told my mom and dad that there was something the matter with their baby's heart. At the time of that appointment, they gave me a 1% chance of living. They did come back and say they were wrong, and they did apologize, but at the time, they said I had a 1% chance of living. They also told my mom that she had to be bedridden, because if I were born early, I definitely would not have made it. Which I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for my mom because she had a toddler. My brother was born November 6th of 1991, so she had a toddler and had to be bedridden while working full time. So I came on my own on December 12th of 1993. I say came on my own in air quotes because if you know me, you know I'm a devout Roman Catholic, and I firmly believe, and my family firmly believes, that Our Lady of Guadalupe, whose feast day I was born on, which December 12th, interceded and helped me be born on that day, so that I could live. At 36 hours old, they had to balloon my mitral valve. So they rushed me to Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, which thankfully wasn't very far from the hospital in which I was born. And they tried multiple times, couldn't get it. Actually came out and told my dad, who had come with me, around, I believe it was 3 a.m., that if they didn't get it this last time, that they were going to give up and they weren't going to be able to save me. Because at the time, my mitral valve was almost fused closed. So they tried the last time and they got it. However, in the course of them getting my mitral valve ballooned open, they did tear one of the 3 cusps of my mitral valve, which eventually down the road led to what is called mitral valve regurgitation, which is when the flaps that open and close once per beat of the heart don't close properly, and they leak blood back into the left atrium. That is according to Penn Medicine website. They knew that they had to go in at some point and repair my torn flap of my mitral valve. However, I was also born with pyloric stenosis, which is a thickening or swelling of the pylorus, the muscle between the stomach and intestines, that causes severe and forceful vomiting in the first few months of life. The enlargements of the pylorus causes a narrowing or stenosis of the opening from the stomach to the intestines, which blocks the stomach contents from moving into the intestines. And that information is from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia website, excuse me. So I had to be a certain weight in order to have my first open heart surgery. But because I had pyloric stenosis, I was throwing up all the time and was not able to get to that weight. So I had to have a feeding tube. I had an oxygen tube. There are pictures of me as a baby with a feeding tube down my nose with the oxygen line on my nose. So the first year of my life, I was in and out of the hospital just because of all of the different issues that I had between my heart and the pyloric stenosis. I had my first open heart surgery on September 12th of 1994. However, the night before my first open heart surgery, my heart went into cardiac arrest 5 times. The last time my parents were called to the hospital, they walked in and I was hooked up to what's called ECMO, which is the highest and most advanced form of life support. And they were actually told by the doctors and nurses that if I went into cardiac arrest another time, they didn't know if they'd be able to save me. I was only resuscitated from my cardiac arrest by CPR, which was taught to the doctors and nurses about 5 years prior to my birth. I was sustained on ECMO, which is the life support apparatus. So I had my first open heart at 9 months old on September 12th, as I said, and at that time they put in an artificial mitral valve. The little flaps of the one little flap of the mitral valve, they replaced and repaired my aortic valve. I led a normal life. I didn't have any other issues until I was 3 years old when I almost drowned. I was in a hotel in Toronto with my family. My dad turned his back and I jumped off of the little ledge and almost drowned. So not really heart related, but definitely a scary time in my life. I thankfully don't remember it, but it did happen. When I was 7 years old, I had my second open heart surgery. This time I had it in Boston because my cardiothoracic surgeon had moved to Boston and we wanted to follow him. However, it did not go smoothly. During the surgery, or during the recovery, I should say, they pulled the chest tube too soon and my lungs filled with blood. So fast forward a couple years and I was eating a push pop and was closing it with my teeth and it slipped and cut the roof of my mouth. That led to a fever of 104 and delusions. We ultimately learned that I had what's called endocarditis, which is an infection of the heart where it just eats your heart. And my pediatrician was actually kind enough and, a friend of the family, that he actually came to my mom and dad's house on Easter Sunday to check me out because my mom and dad were very concerned that I had this fever of 104. He told my mom and dad to go to Children's Hospital right away. We did. They did some tests, told me to head home, and the next day they called and said, get her in here stat. She has endocarditis. I was in the hospital, I believe, for about a week or so. The fever finally broke, and I now just have to be careful anytime I have a cut or anything like that because it can get infected, which is ultimately what led to the endocarditis. At the age of 14, I had my third open heart surgery. I've had so many because they've had to repair and replace the mitral and aortic valve, and also they've had to have it grow with me. It will never grow. It will never grow naturally, obviously, But because I would get bigger, they had to put in a bigger valve replacement. So at 14, they did my third open heart surgery. And at the time, they actually found that I had an aneurysm on my heart. So they removed that during the surgery. And then a couple days into recovery, my lung collapsed. So I was taken back to the ICU, had one of those CPAP breathing machines, and I was fine. Was able to go home on March 17th of 2008. So it is coming up soon. The surgery was March 10th of 2008, and I was able to leave the hospital and go home March 17th. So the anniversary is coming up. So other than that, I just go to see my cardiologist every year. I'm on blood thinners for the rest of my life, and they just monitor me. I can't play sports, but I am training to be a physique bodybuilder, which also has had its fair share of bumps in the road. So when I was in high school, before I explain my story about how I got into bodybuilding, when I was in high school, I struggled with an eating disorder. I told my mom and dad, my family, that I wanted to wear a size 6 dress to graduation, and that I didn't want to eat anymore. My dad told me no. I did end up going on a diet that did work. I was able to wear a size 6, but I have the eating disorder tendencies. So throughout college, I had the same thing. I was the student manager of my men's baseball team. So of course I wanted to be like the guys. I lifted weights. I exercised pretty much every day, but I still had those tendencies of not wanting to eat because I felt so fat. I also have body dysmorphic disorder. Not as extreme as some people, but I definitely do have the tendencies. So I was able to keep it under control. I was able to go to talk to a psychiatrist about it, therapist. But I got out of college and I stopped going because I went to college in a different state. So I went home, went into a master's program, and I continued to have the eating disorder, non-anorexic tendencies. So during the pandemic, it got really, really bad. I went from 140 pounds to 118, and everything shut down in March, and I think I went to like 118 by July. It was pretty fast. And I actually had told my husband, not my now husband, my fiance at the time, that I wanted to be 100 pounds for our wedding. I was not. I was about 118, 120. But I basically didn't eat for about a year. And I decided ultimately that I wanted to have a life with my husband. So I decided to go get help. So after my husband and I got married, we actually found bodybuilding because we decided that I needed to do something where I could exercise, because I do love to exercise. I do love to lift. It does make me feel very strong and empowered, but I also had to eat, and I had to eat appropriately and correctly. So we found bodybuilding, and I was supposed to compete in my first show in October of 2022. October 1st of 2022. However, 6 weeks prior to my show, August 5th, I actually tore my meniscus while lifting. At the time, we didn't know it was torn. We thought it might have been sprained or strained. But I went and got an MRI. They told me it was torn, and I ultimately decided to drop out of my competition, which was a blessing in disguise because September 10th into the 11th, I actually had a hemorrhagic stroke. I had come home from being out with my friend and my husband. I had opened a Pepsi, and I started getting violently ill. And like throughout the night, I would get violently ill. And my husband and my friend were like, we need to go to the hospital. You should go to the hospital. We should call an ambulance. And I kept telling them, no, I'm fine. It's just the stomach flu, or it's food poisoning or something. Well, my eyes started going in two different directions. So my husband called my mom at like 9 in the morning on September 11th and said, something's wrong with Sophia. We need to go to the hospital. So my dad came and picked us up, and we were at the hospital. He took me to the hospital with my husband. I did have a sleep mask on at the time because I was getting so frustrated and anxious, that I couldn't see, that my husband just gave me a sleep mask and said, just put this on. It's okay. We'll be here. So they took me back. We got to the hospital. My husband and my dad immediately said, there's something wrong. Her eyes are going in two different directions and she's been getting sick. She can't walk straight. They said, okay, well, it's probably just vertigo. But they got me back, and the doctor said, well, it's probably just vertigo, but we'll do a CT scan. Well, they found a bleed in the back of my brain. We don't know exactly how it happened. I did have a concussion in the same place in April of 2022 by hitting myself with a 70-pound fixed barbell, but we don't know for certain if that is what ultimately caused the stroke. So I was in the hospital for about 12 days. I was in the ICU for about 5, in the step-down unit for about 7. And so I wouldn't have been able to compete anyway, because I did look like a drunk person. I could not walk straight, and I just would not have been able to compete. So I was eventually cleared from my stroke in December of 2022. I had my knee surgery February 6th of 2023 and got back into the gym in end of April, beginning of May of 2023. I met with my trainer, and she told me that she thought I would be ready to compete in 2024. So I am 9 weeks and 4 days as of this recording from my first bodybuilding competition. It definitely has not been easy. It's a lot of diet. The diet is very strict. The workouts are very tough. But I want to be able to prove to people that just because you have a medical condition, and just because you are possibly considered different than others, that you can still do it. I do have to be careful I can't take supplements. I can't take a lot of different things like that. I have to be careful with my calorie intake. I can't go below a certain number. But I have learned over the years that the more people tell me I can't, or I won't, or I shouldn't, the more I want to do it. So that's a little bit about me. I do wish everybody a very happy Heart Month and a very happy Black History Month. And I would absolutely love comments. If you could share the video. It does also get the information out to other people. I will admit that I also do suffer from depression and anxiety just because of all the trauma that I have gone through in my life. I am seeing a therapist. I am on antidepressants. But this could help somebody else. So that's all for now. I'm going to leave it here. And if you could like, comment, share, and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. Love you all. Thanks. Bye.